This episode of This Agile Life has been brought to you by BrilliantAgile.com, providing Agile and Scrum training, consultancy, and personnel.
BrilliantAgile.com. Done right, it's brilliant.
Recorded on Tuesday, February 26th, 2013, in St. Louis, Missouri. This Agile Life, Episode 12. Put it in a time capsule. Welcome to This Agile Life, a podcast about what it's like to be agile in the real world. Joining me today are my co-hosts, Matt Corwell.
Hey, how's it going, everybody?
It's going good, Matt. How are you doing?
I'm having a blast.
Long time no see. Good to see you here tonight.
Yeah, thank you. Good to be here.
Also on the podcast tonight, Jason Tice. Hey, Jason, how's it going?
I'm ready to talk about the State of the Union.
The State of the Union or the State of Agile? Both.
I'll spin that later.
And connecting to us all the way from St. James, Missouri, Amos King.
Well, we'll see how well our lag holds out, but I'm pretty excited to be the first remote guest.
Yeah, that's true. This is a milestone for us.
Amos, are you in the cloud?
I'm in the cloud? Is that what you asked?
Yeah, are you in the cloud?
I guess I am in the cloud. I live in the clouds. Okay, well, we won't talk about my drug habits anymore.
I didn't know the cloud went all the way to St. James.
See, if Amos is in the cloud, that really means he's an architect at heart.
Whoa, that's dangerous.
Well,
Those fighting words.
The cloud in St. James is more like a low-hanging fog that barely moves.
A haze.
Yeah. Okay. So, guys, tonight our main discussion, our topic is a report that was published by Version 1. It's their 7th annual State of Agile Development Survey results document. It was a survey that they collected results on for a couple of months. I actually talked about it on this show back when they published the link for people to go out and provide feedback for the survey. It was collected between August 9th and November 1st of 2012. They had over 4,000 people participate in the survey, including yours truly. Some folks tried to get it started like Amos and then petered out after the first 3 questions because of his ADD.
It wasn't 3 questions. That thing was super long and kept asking me about what tool are you using, and I was answering other on everything because I can't stick to all these tools that they have out there because they don't all fit exactly what I need. So I end up doing my own thing.
So we want to kick the survey around tonight, talk about some of the results, and maybe even see what you folks at home think. So it's I think this is a benefit to the industry just for Version 1 to collect the data for this survey. I think it helps give us in the business at least some ideas of what people are doing and how they're doing it and the tools that they're using and the things that they're doing that make their specific version of Agile work for them, and gives us all a chance to share some of those insights and see what's working and maybe what's not working. What do you guys think? Is this is this survey overall beneficial or harmful to the industry?
I really wish it was done by a nonprofit organization instead of some company who's trying to sell these tools. And I wish it was more worldwide. Like, it's 60% of respondents are from North America, so we really found out what Agile people using a specific set of tools in North America are doing, not worldwide, and not people who may not know these tools or use these tools.
That's a fair point, Matt.
That's definitely a thing. But I look at it and see that as somebody who, we're at the company we're at here, we're pretty deep into Agile, and it's interesting to see, even if it is through rose-colored glasses for this tool, how everybody else is doing and what they're doing. The sections on what tools you use and what methodologies you've adopted and reasons that you succeeded or failed. Colored or not, I think it's cool to get a picture from the rest of the world, So I find that beneficial. I know, Tice, you were saying something different earlier.
Yeah, I kind of have a different viewpoint because, I actually think if you go through the survey, it has highs and lows. I think some of the overall high-level classification information about where Agile's providing value is valuable. Where I think there's risk, though, in the way the survey was put together, is when we start to do a rack and stack or a prioritization of specific things. In particular, things like practices, tools, and even the breakout of the different flavors of what the Agile methodology has evolved to be. And my only concern I see, and again, this is more for people who are in the Agile transformation space. If you have the task of facilitating an Agile transformation or even coaching a team, you're on the ground and you need to work within the context of your environment and coach and or facilitate that transformation effectively. If I'm a manager or a champion of such a transformation, then this survey could be used against you to say, hey, well, the data shows on page 5 that everybody's doing Scrum, and there's been a significant increase in Scrum. So why aren't we doing Scrum? And then, you have to, why? Scrum is not really applicable for us because, and have that discussion. So I guess my request would be for people to take the survey and ensure that if they're going to apply the recommendations, that it makes sense given the nature of the environment you're working in.
So just to summarize,
I mean, maybe if you're starting out, these are good ideas. This gives you like the intro drug to then be able to get your team to make their own decisions.
That's a good point. I just want to give the actual metric here. So for Agile methodologies used, 54% are reported as using Scrum, and 72% of the overall respondents are using some variety of Scrum or a Scrum variant. So I look at this report as data, and so the data is neither good nor bad. It is what it is. It's some data.
But let's talk quality of this data, okay? Because if we got some note cards out, John, and we wrote down on a piece of paper across this room, and Amos can do this away. What does custom hybrid mean? So there's a custom hybrid process that got 9%. There's Scrum Ban, whichever one you ask what Scrum Ban is, it's different. So for when the survey was administered, how did they? And I took it, you took it, and theirs were all up there, and they really didn't have a good definition. So that's where I'm questioning the value of this data and where they got these specific classifications for that really aren't well defined.
I would say, looking at the teams we use here and the things I've done, there's definitely buckets that when they are more well defined, we fall into. But I think that's one of the cool things about Agile is that you really. I don't want to be defining specific buckets to put my stuff in. I want to be doing what works for my team.
Or everybody's Agile should be custom.
Right. Right. Exactly. And so that seeing this is interesting how people view themselves. But I agree with you that the likelihood that the people are doing exactly what they say, like even if they believe they're doing it, that it really would fall into that bucket is A, I don't think the bucket is not real, and B, they probably are misinformed. I mean, I don't mean to sound mean, but there's just such a wide variety of how do you slice it up?
Even if people have a customized version of Scrum, I think they're going to naturally self-select to Scrum because that's what they talk about all the time, our Scrum process, etc. I think the custom hybrid one is...
Well, and what if you're not really doing Scrum at all? And then we have in here that 34% of the respondents said that they're Scrum Masters. And if you go down to who knows about Agile, it says 43% of the respondents say Scrum Masters are the most knowledgeable about Agile. Well, duh.
And think about the type
this is just like an advertise. If I was a Scrum Master, I would be going out and using this as advertisement for me to get jobs.
Exactly. And if you're any part of the Scrum food chain, that's reliable. And if you're the type of person who's probably in a marketing database for an Agile tool company who might have received the solicitation to maybe think about taking the survey, you're probably a Scrum. You have a specific role. So from once upon a time, big evil enterprise architect dude who does Six Sigma stuff or used to do Six Sigma stuff, from the scientific methodology that's used to put together a non-biased survey, I think a few flags go off with in terms of how relevant this data is from a scientific perspective.
Okay.
I think there's value to it, and again, the other thing that I want to throw out there to the credit of Version 1, Version 1 is an Agile company, they build an Agile product, they use Agile to do it, and this is full transparency of what they're doing. And I think that's very, in the spirit of Agile, that's very awesome. So there's nothing wrong with it, but it's interesting that we're kind of calling this the overall viewpoint of the Agile community or the state of Agile, and I think it needs to be credited as saying this is a viewpoint from a specific stakeholder in that community.
Have you seen a viewpoint from any other stakeholder? Like, if they're the only ones expressing a viewpoint, that kind of wins the argument. Like, you know, that just by lack of other entries. So if no one can give us a better overall view, then this is as good as we've got. That works for me. I mean,
and to be fair, this is a great example of a type of a product that will go places. It looks good. It presents well. It's
I really do like looking at
creative.
this survey. It makes me think of a graphic novel, and like I've been just scrolling up and down and thinking of all the pretty colors.
Yeah. So to your point, Matt, what again?
They do have some beautiful infographics.
They do.
What I like about this, and this is something I was even talking about with some folks today. There is a huge value of writing stuff down. And by writing stuff down, you can use that as a change management strategy to build consensus and actually support a strategy. So again, I love what version 1 did because they wrote their stuff down and they put it out there on the wall for everyone to critique. And what they've actually, from that point, they've taken a stand, and it's a great stand, I think. There's value to that. To your point, Matt, what other folks haven't done, I think there's a calling for other people to present their viewpoints out there and then have some discussions about how those may be different. But in many spaces, there are lots of, tools, projects, industries, and even projects where people don't take the time to write the stuff down. And then there's just all this bickering, blah, 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 about what we're ever going to do. And as a result, nothing ever gets done.
So I agree that this is definitely not scientific, the results of this survey. I also believe that the tool that version 1 puts forward, version 1, is not limited to Scrum, so it doesn't benefit them necessarily to skew this in the direction of Scrum. But what I think that what I sense a little bit of pushback from you guys on is the fact that Scrum is so high on this list, and that's going to get used against us, you, the industry at some point. And what I want to say about that is that's already happened. When you went to Agile 2012 and presented, Jason, 50% or more of the stuff was all centered around Scrum. Isn't that right?
I mean, there's a convergence in the market but that's Scrum. That was a strategic activity at the Scrum guys.
Yes.
Scrum
wanted to do that.
Scrum is winning.
But what they did is, all they did, this is
Charlie Sheen.
Charlie Sheen.
This is an economic discussion. Scrum took a very open-ended concept, which was Agile, of which there are 5 values and there are 12 guiding principles. They said, we're going to productize that. And they did.
Yes.
And what they seized upon is that it's hard to sell principles and 5 mysterious values, because what is that? But you can sell a product just like you can sell a car. It's hard to sell you, John, here's the blueprints and the idea to go build your own car, and then you have to go do it. I mean, but if you do the work, you might get a great car that you really love, but only you love it and only you understand how to drive it. The market wants to buy an off-the-shelf product.
I agree.
And so the Scrum guys seized on that, and that's cool.
This is what I begged for.
And John seized on that too. He's a Scrum master.
I am. And I
just threw you under the bus, John.
I begged for some sort of Agile blueprint. I've been begging for that for years, for somebody to put that forward, and it never has happened. I, of course, never did it. I think others struggled with doing it, and Scrum has done it and taken off because of it. Because people see it as a manual that they can pull off of the shelf and run the playbook on it. And I know that that's not the case. And I know
this is why people like Zed Shaw put up programming.
Explicit tag has just been added to this podcast.
Thanks, Amos.
The other thing that's interesting.
Well, no, you could beep that out.
Well, the other thing I'll just throw out there is, what is the exact definition of what Agile is? Because this, these people say Agile again is this values and principles.
We're going to need more beer.
And time.
But then we got all these techniques in here, and then the techniques came from XP, and it's like, none of that matters in my opinion, because it's all about what are you doing day to day, and as long as it's successful, allowing you to deliver things, be it, we'll call it software for the purpose of this discussion, delivering things to your customer that add value and meet their expectations. Frankly, in the spirit of Agile, who cares how you do it as long as it meets their needs?
I would agree completely. I would say that my, when I hear Scrum and I hear that manual and this is the way to implement a blueprint, and call us or call me a snob or an elitist or a purist. I prefer like a purist, but I'm open to whatever. I think that just defeats that exact purpose. Is like you just said, like as long as I'm meeting the adding value on a daily basis and being able to react to the customer's needs, it doesn't matter how we do it, and that Scrum saying here's this manual.
Yeah.
I feel boxed in by it. But if they want to do it, it's cool. Like live how you want to live. I'm not going to judge you. Just don't make me do it.
That's right. And so Scrum is not right for you. You have a lot more experience than probably the typical person who is going to pull that Scrum manual off the shelf and try and run it, right? But it's something that's approachable, and it's a way for people to wade into something that's otherwise very daunting. Like we said, how can you wade through, all of the documentation or all of the writing and all of the blogging and all of the podcasts on the internet to figure out what's right for you? I think the best way to do it is to have something that's consumable to start with. Go ahead, Amos.
And it's great for if you have a company that is easy to make change. You can take Scrum as a starting point, and you can grow it and change it and make your own process that works for you and your team. But if you get into a company that is a little slower to move and they get sold on Scrum, and then you realize that you need to make changes, or you want to get rid of fixed iteration, you want to go to a continuous flow, then you get boxed in and told, no, I'm sorry, that's not Scrum. You can't do that.
You still have continuous improvement. You still have continuous improvement in Scrum. I mean, that's a core tenet of that Agile practice.
No, not continuous improvement, continuous flow, Kanban, something like that.
So you guys know what emergence is? The concept of emergence?
I do, but I'm sure you're going to tell me anyway.
Well, I'm just looking to level set. So this is this idea from Agile that really from a leadership perspective, Agile should facilitate a climate where people are allowed to emerge and become and really provide leadership that empowers people to be successful. And the only concern, again, that we mentioned before is that we're effectively saying that the industry is leaning towards taking an off-the-shelf approach where I get standard processes, standard practices, which, I can adapt them, but this tendency is going to be to take them as is and only modify as by exceptions. And then we look at some of the other things that are even in the survey talking about techniques. They talked about the value of like coding standards, which in terms of emergence is interesting to discuss if that's relevant. Because if I need to evolve and define standards that are relevant for the project I'm working on, I should be allowed to do that. And I should be mandated by some other entity that here are the standards thou shalt follow, because that might hold me back. So,
this doesn't say that their standards are mandated to them. They're just saying that being aware of standards, whether it be through developing them or having them applied, would be important. I think, as your particular example, I mean, and I think it would be interesting to move on and say, okay, there's Scrum is what Scrum is, and there's all these different things on the board. Like we said, that the buckets of how those really get defined are pretty ambiguous, or there's a lot of ambiguity in them. One of those two words. But I think what's really, to me, telling is that list that Tice was just talking about, the Agile techniques employed. And to me, the way I view Agile and the different processes that mean the most to me, some of these things in here are really kind of disjointed. Like, the top three being daily stand-up, iteration planning, and unit testing. But then TDD is way over, like, at the end. So if you're unit testing but you're not TDDing, you're wasting your time. You're backfilling tests around code that was already written, and you're losing the benefit of I'm letting the tests evolve my design, evolve my code, and basically generate my code for me. So I would see if I saw people doing these things.
It's better than no tests.
I don't know. I think I disagree. I think that if you have written your code base and you don't have any tests around it, and then you can waste time to backfill the test, what have you gained? Well, you would be better off to wait till there's a bug and then fill tests in that categorize that bug and codify the issue, and then fix
but hopefully,
the bug.
Whenever I backfill those tests, it gives me a something to run those tests against when I want to refactor or try to improve.
But that's what I'm saying.
That
once you get there where you have this untested code, you let it live until there's a need to put tests around it. You don't just spend time doing it. But the point being, I don't want to get us off on that tangent, is that I think for my point of view, a lot of the things, if I saw people doing things in this order, and that's not everybody saying they're doing them in this order, but in this level of priority, I would think they were missing the end game quite a bit if the way they put these things together.
What you're talking about is there are some, I'll use the term, some sweet spots. So there are certain mixes of practices, of techniques that if you've chosen to invest in one, maybe there's a logical follow-on from which you can further increase your return by linking things together. The way the survey was set up, it didn't facilitate capture of any of that data, which is really what's most valuable. This question on the survey was just a big pick list for, out of all these techniques that we believe are agile, which ones are you doing? And they simply got some quantities. They didn't capture any relational data, which is the real value. So again, I think that there is an opportunity, again, very novel attempt version 1, but really there's an opportunity, I think, for the community or a vendor, whoever wants to do the work, or some guys doing an Agile podcast who want another project to work on, to do a real scientific survey of what this stuff is and what it means, and don't just capture the count, but capture the linkages between the counts. So for these people who are doing unit testing, really say, well, hey, how many of them are actually doing TDD, or then try to explore why the people who are doing unit testing aren't doing TDD, and also then have it integrated to that with a CI rig.
Yeah, I think that you lost me at scientific, but I get the general principle of what you're applying there. Like there is more to the story here, and I just, as a first glance looking at it, I thought, man, that stuff's in the wrong priority order for me. And seeing that the industry says that daily stand-up iteration planning are more important than pair programming, continuous deployment, and TDD. Personal opinion, that's weird.
So, I don't think it's saying that those are more important. It's just saying that that's what people are registering as what they're using.
Right.
See, what drew me to Agile, I'll share personally, is that, okay, let's take a really complicated thing that we really don't know what it is. And then let's actually take it and really do something shocking with it. So let's say that system or that activity that we're doing, this mysterious thing called Agile, is really in a state of chaos. It's out there. It's all, really...
Everything's in a state of chaos.
Well, there's degrees, but let's acknowledge it. And that's, to scientists, that might seem like a really far idea, but, Agile's based on this premise of chaos theory and how software development is an inherently technically complicated activity, so it's very hard to control. And so from that, what we're seeing here, and so I was drawn saying that, hey, we have this system that we really can't impose intelligent control over because we can't work through all the permutations of what it is. So we want to empower the people doing the work to make intelligent decisions and to figure out how to be successful. That was cool. What I'm concerned about is that we now see where we've got all these factors of external domination coming into the space, and could potentially set us up for situations where we start going into the unintelligent control because we're trying to levy these rigid, externally governed best practices into environments where they may not provide any value.
And that's one of the things that I think is important about the data behind this survey, and the survey itself and the results of the survey especially, is that this gives us some more information and it helps us be better prepared when we go to have conversations with new clients or with people in the business community. And they say to me, I hear that Scrum is the number one Agile practice of choice in organizations, and I can be ready to address that, right? As well as a number of these other things. Because even though this data is imperfect, it's still a leading indicator of stuff that's going on in the industry. And this is a way to help me be prepared to have those conversations about Scrum, about why Agile projects fail, about why Agile projects succeed, and helps to draw some linkages back, use some of this data to make my point, and to help convince someone that, an Agile transformation or a boot camp of some sort to get an Agile project started is a good idea and a good approach.
So let's have our favorite segment on the podcast. It's called John's Coaching Clinic. So the scenario, John, is, hi, I'm your chief executive. You work for me, John. I brought you in to facilitate my Agile transformation. Last week we talked about Agile principles, practices, and you kind of coached me on what my role was. You told me that the governance of Agile should arise from localized activities, the things that as you as a coach of those coaching teams, you're working through, and you guys are making decisions in specific to meet the needs of your customers, and you guys do that independently with a localized governance pattern. So there's no big evil change control board. I'm your executive. I have version 1 sent me a special copy of the survey, and I say, wow, this really looks like we should just do what they're doing. We should do these things that they're saying are the best, that the most people are doing. We should ensure that all of our teams across the company have a daily stand-up and are doing iteration planning and are doing unit testing and retrospectives because those are the 4 most common techniques employed. How are you going to coach me and talk to me?
Do you want to be a leader or a follower?
Is he coaching that too? So okay. So bring it on, John. Come on.
First of all, if an executive is going to have this level of knowledge and insight into the process, I'm happy already. That's already one battle that's won.
Well, according to the survey that we're looking at, the management is the biggest champion. 63% of respondents said that management was the original champion of Agile methods in the company.
Yeah, I think that's great. And if he wants to ask me, why are we doing these things or not doing these things? Should we be doing these things? That would be a great opportunity to have that conversation and to talk about this data and to express why it's important to do iteration planning or to do daily stand-ups or to do unit testing, or why maybe iteration planning is not right for us, and explain that.
Well, and we had talked too, I think at one point in the show, about when, as a consultant, when working with a client was the right client or the wrong kind of project. And I think if what you're describing though is someone saying, I picked these processes out of the air, and if I'm dictating that you do them, I don't think it really is an agile transformation anymore. It's just someone else dictating processes, and maybe you cut ties and do something different. So if there's a communication and back and forth like you're describing, John, I agree. I think that's awesome. But if it's just dictation, the point you're saying is you don't want to be under anybody's thumb. I mean, that's what it comes down to, right?
To an extent. And that's where I'm seeing that, okay, so you're a coach. How is this survey, which is designed to be almost global in nature, it's defined as the state of Agile, how is this necessarily supportive of localized governance? So it could be taken out of context, and it could be said, well, we should just adopt, we should just do whatever version 1 says.
You could start there, and that's where the conversation can go. I think most executives would realize, or most senior managers, right, would realize the imperfection, A, in this data, and B, that while you may take something off the shelf to start with, that to optimize and lean out the process, there's always going to be some amount of customization that you're going to want to do. And I think a senior manager and executive would recognize that and say, yeah, you're right. I agree that that's the case. I understand why we need to have, in the architecture term, local governance to apply those optimizations and customizations to meet the needs, the unique needs, because everybody feels like their needs are unique, and they are, to their business, to their domain, to their knowledge workers. What I think is an incredible kind of segueing to another statistic here that was pulled is that the leading is all the information around the leading causes of failed Agile projects, and really far down on the list is a committed product owner. And as a matter of fact, I think it falls into the category of lack of management support, but I don't actually see any other place in this list where they mention lack of product owner as a leading cause for failed Agile projects. And in my experience, a lack of a product owner has been one of the critical keys to success and one of the leading causes of failed Agile projects.
This whole question I didn't like.
Really?
Well,
I don't think you like the survey very much at all, Jason.
Again, I have a hard time getting beyond, because I guess I'm just seeing ways that the survey and the could have been designed, and the data could have been, if it had been designed differently and there was a little bit more emphasis on correlation, that you could have gotten so much more fidelity out of this information. So you ask a question about why do projects fail, and then in the overall markup, you actually denote that out of the response. So you dilute the metrics by saying, hey, we allow people to select that none of the projects failed when we ask a question about what projects failed or why did projects fail. Those
are the people using version 1's tool.
Well, I mean, but that skews the distribution and distorts the fidelity of the data.
I don't know though. I mean, Is it possible to believe that people had just successful projects one after the other with Agile? I mean, you can keep on winning.
But see, to me, from a survey perspective, and this is classical statistical analysis, you ask a question that says, did you have an Agile project that failed, yes or no? And then from that you say, okay, you identify, hey, these percentage of people were really successful. They used Agile and they didn't have any failures. That's cool. Let's ask them why they think they didn't have any failures and present that data. Then let's for the other side, hey, you had an Agile project that failed. Let's say, why do you think it failed? And break those out as two different populations and distributions, and the data is a lot more valuable. So again, I'm gonna have,
and you reduce the chances of it being just an emotional response.
Yes.
Yeah, I've never failed.
You guys are getting way too hung up. I think.
Did I mention how much I like the colors?
On the method behind how they did this. I mean,
So
people had problems. People had problems.
I'll tell you my favorite piece of data on the entire thing.
Okay.
The Agile techniques employed. There's A through Z in Agile techniques deployed. So the W for continuous deployment, and it has a frowny face next to it. It's the only sad face in the entire document, and I totally agree with it. I wish that continuous deployment was up there with daily stand-up.
Yeah.
I agree. But we've got to get, for the sake at least of this conversation, I think we've got to get past the imperfection of the mechanism used to gather the data, and possibly
that's fine.
to at least have a conversation, sane conversation about this.
In that vein, what is Agile portfolio management? It's 34% of the respondents don't know what it is, and I'm one of them. So
Sure.
Does anybody know?
It's the bigger. How do we as an organization manage all of our Agile projects
and specifically for really to put this in context from version 1's viewpoint. So they last year actually added a new capability to their tool to do management of different Agile projects across a portfolio. So this is where the little simple Agile tool turns into the big evil enterprise dashboard and allows me to do like diagnostics where I can measure the health of projects comparatively across my organization, assuming they're all using the same tool and they've identified the touch points back to this enterprise dashboard that it provides. If you want to have visibility of what's going on across your enterprise and you're going to use that appropriately from a strategic point, that's great. If you want to take that out of context and do all types of management by metrics and top-down governance and say, you know what, John's team has a higher velocity than Amos's team. So you know what, whatever John's team is doing, he should bottle up and make Amos do it. That's where the risk comes. I'm hoping people don't take those capabilities.
We've already talked about the metrics problem last time.
And I don't necessarily.
Where if you're judging teams against each other on metrics, then it causes big problems.
But what this whole idea of Agile portfolio management is, say you've got all these different projects who are doing Agile. Let's consider them a portfolio of technology. So this is more for, say, a corporate IT environment where you've got different internal development teams, and you want to look at different things to compare what those teams are doing and manage that as a portfolio of assets.
I would be careful to categorize it as comparing.
Well, you want to have awareness or see data.
I think you want to have awareness of and be able to have some high-level, bubbled-up, management-level sort of
and knowing that until they did that,
things.
there really was a way, because most Agile tools were siloed. So here's your Agile tool, here's your
like
workflow.
Excel.
Yeah, for John's team, for everyone's team, and now this is a way you can integrate those into a single viewpoint.
I think if I work at GM and I'm one of 100 Agile teams and management at GM, the CEO of GM wants to know how my team's doing, he should just come to stand up.
And it's not. I don't think it's. So I think that's a fair assessment. It's not intended to roll everybody in GM all up to one level. I think it's for you're working on the accounts payable system, and there's other accounts payable projects going on that it would address a portfolio of accounts payable projects.
Yeah.
I think one of the things that this metric points out, or these statistics point out, around Agile portfolio management is the fact that Agile portfolio management has been a buzzword out in the industry, but I don't think I think it demonstrates that it hasn't gained a lot of traction with practitioners because there's not a lot of value to the individual projects to use an Agile portfolio management
or,
solution.
Again, if you look at the way the survey was administered, the majority of the respondents who answered the survey self-identified themselves as being practitioners really at the 1 to maybe, I think, 3 team level. Mm-hmm. So there aren't a whole bunch of evil enterprise architects and evil portfolio managers who took this survey who would come in and represent that different viewpoint. If you've ever had to manage a technology portfolio and manage all the different costs, all of us on this tonight are effectively consultants. We work individually for different clients who have given us very specific roles to support them, and they're not asking us in most instances to manage a corporate IT environment. The value that Agile Portfolio Management provides from that viewpoint isn't really there. But if you are that person who is looking across the balance sheet and trying to manage a whole IT enterprise, there's a lot of value there.
Okay.
So as we're talking, just to switch gears again, John, you had mentioned earlier about lack of product owner not being specifically called out.
Right.
Further down on page 7 of the survey, specific organizational issues cited where there are specific problems that were behind project failures, which I'm not sure how that's different than the other question. But on that one, communication between dev and the product owner was one of the major issues, and that is, as like we've seen, a major failure point.
What do you guys think was meant by the number 1?
Well, it's halfway down, right? But like the big thing that I noticed off that, I was just looking at the same spot you were, Corwell, is the failure to integrate the right people and a failure to get a team-based culture. I think that those two are kind of based on the same thing, right? If you don't have the right people, it's going to be hard to make them into a team.
Yeah, everybody's got to drink the Kool-Aid.
This is a big thing that if you're going to go with Agile and give people, the developers, the responsibility of doing the right thing, you have to make sure you have people who are going to do the right thing and who understand what the right thing to do is.
So let me ask you this, Amos. What do you think failure to integrate people means?
On the left-hand side, it says failure to integrate the right people.
Okay, but still, what does that mean?
It clarifies it.
I get that, but what?
I think that they're saying that the people that they have don't have either the right amount of experience, the right amount of technical knowledge,
passion,
the right amount of ability to work together, passion, those kind of things. The things that we hold as the people that we would want to be on a team with. So the failure to get the right people would be failure to get people that you would want to work with.
So so I'm the big executive, I'm looking failure to integrate people. What is the mitigation to that? So I'm running an Agile organization, I'm John's boss over here, and John, I want to ensure that we do not fail to integrate our people into our process because that will make us be unsuccessful. What do you do? And I think that's separate from the underperforming team member thing last time. This is more
agreed.
about. So if you're concerned about this, what's some practical advice for people who are facing that to overcome this?
I'd like to say that I like that Jason always
whenever
forces
you're hiring,
the tough questions down on me, by the way. Sorry, Amos, you were saying?
I was going to say, when it starts out whenever you're hiring or building a team, you need to sit back and you need to look at the people that you have coming in who might join the team. Make sure that they're team oriented, that they're not going to go sit in a cube and be angry every time somebody tries to talk to them. You need to make sure that they have passion, and hopefully you have some of them that have experience with Agile practices in the past to help spin up the other people on the team. If you want to have people that are able to work as a team, which there are people whenever you're interviewing, you can say, hey, how do you feel about working with a bunch of people? And there are developers who will tell you, I would rather go into an office and shut the door and nobody bother me all day.
Right.
So you need to avoid those type of people if you want a team-based environment.
And to hopefully give at least an answer to your question, I feel like giving the teams the ability to be self-organizing and to get themselves managed and to have the opportunity to vote somebody off the island, so to speak. Not that I don't know that I can remember a team where we actively threw somebody off, but I think that when that team has the ability and the confidence to insist that we're going to do a CI server, or, hey, listen, I'm going to call you out at stand-up, or you're going to get called out at stand-up because you're not writing tests first, or you're not doing this practice that we've all agreed upon, right? There would be a lot of organizations where you were talking about the difference between dictating what they're going to do and letting it emerge. And I think that as a manager, committing to let that emergence happen and letting the team kind of handle its own issues, deal with its own dirty laundry, it may seem risky to some people, but I think that's how that stuff gets sorted out.
See, I think there's a
and I have seen companies in the past that take a group of people because they want to give people that ability to self-manage. They say, hey, I'm going to get these 10 guys who have been in a cubicle for the last 10 years, but they've worked for me for a long time. They have a lot of experience. They should be able to self-manage. And they throw them out there and say, you guys are going to be agile. And if you go through and ask them, 9 of those people say, I have no interest in even doing agile. You've already started with failure. You need 9 guys on that team that say, I want to try out agile.
Right.
And maybe one guy that says, you have to convince me.
See, the viewpoint that I guess I kind of have, and it kind of comes from, it first came from looking at the criteria. It said failure to integrate people, and then even, Amos, to your point, it's failure to integrate the right people. That denotes that there's some type of a fit. And what I'm wondering is if one of the elements here that, again, isn't really called in the survey, is the part of the problem is that the people, be them the right people or not, they really don't know or understand what they're trying to integrate to. And this is where we can go back to Agile.
Or don't care.
Well, but we can go back to Agile Scrum again, because Scrum, if you take it off the shelf, it gives you, here's exactly what you need to do and what you need to integrate with. And in Agile, there's a certain need for the environment, be that the company, the team, or somebody, to define and help to shape, not dictate, but help to shape what that is that you are integrating to. And if that's not well done, I think that could shoot your people integration and your team approach. It could shoot it in the foot because people want to be part of the group, but if this idea of what the group is and how it works isn't even really well spelled out, people could get really frustrated.
Well, and maybe that's part of what makes the people there is you're willing to go set out and help figure out what works best for your team and help define those things. I think that's one of that there's a little bit of an explorer mentality in it, especially with a transformation or a new team. You said, okay, we all are going to work towards making this work the best. We're going to be willing to adapt. And if what I suggested didn't work and it was more of a problem, then we're going to try yours. So maybe if someone thinks that is not an activity that sounds cool to them, maybe that's a good key. They're not a right fit.
And that's a good point, Matt. But what I think is,
when you put the 10 guys in the room and you say, hey, we're going to put you guys on an agile team, and 5 of them go, ugh, maybe those are the 5 people that you didn't want to integrate.
And I think that's part of the problem that this particular issue, failure to integrate people, is pointing out that sometimes managers or executives make a decision and they say, we're going to go agile. But what happens is for those practitioners, they're either not interested, as Amos pointed out, in doing agile, or they are interested, but they don't feel like they're given the necessary tools, coaching, on-the-job training to make them successful. Management hasn't integrated those people successfully into an agile pilot project or an agile a series of agile pilot projects.
To me, it's 2 things. It's in some instances, it's a shame we do this after hours. This is where we need to make Lee's life over there as the audio guy fun and grab the wireless mic and go out and interview a random developer on the floor, because I think that people want to be part of the team. Personally, I'll share that's what drew me to doing small teams in Agile, because it's like, hey, it's this fun little group thing that everyone's involved. But some folks need a little bit more, I'll use the term structured definition, and so we can have a structured debate about what that is. Just say, hey, what is this thing we're supporting? Because some people don't know what the vision, what the overall vision is, what the mission of the team is, what they're trying to do, and hence they don't know what to integrate with. To your point, John, the other thing that I think is key to this is for especially new people in the environment, or maybe people who are struggling. At one point they were more successful, but then they tend to trend downwards, is to assure them that it is a two-way street. To say that, yes, some things that we need to do are, we need to think about overall coming to an approach, or in some instances we may have to say we have to follow this evil, rigid best practice which has been levied upon us by a government stature. But at the same time, we want to involve you in the process. We want to empower you and allow you to emerge. So we want you to have a voice, and we want you to speak up, and that's what you're integrating with. Because I think sometimes people show up and they expect it to be, they're going to tell us what to do. Or there's other people say, we're going to tell the world what we're going to do, and we're just going to do whatever we think like, and if that's not well defined, then you get frustrated. And so if you're coaching a team or you're a team...
You mentioned small teams. That's one thing that I wish was on here with the people who said they were successful or unsuccessful. I would like to see what their team sizes were.
Yeah,
because I am betting that if you take 15 people from a company that's never done Agile and put them on one team and say all 15 of you are doing Agile together, that's going to be really hard and they're not going to be successful.
So free
I would
advertisement
like to
for
see what
version
people
1.
think the ideal team size is too.
I think we have a few folks who are open to pro bono consulting on helping to design a more scientific Agile survey that will track the correlations through the data set to do this type of more detailed analysis.
Let's pick another.
You can figure out how to find us. We're on the internet.
Let's pick another fun stat to look at. How about the why Agile stat on page 9 of the survey? The main reason I wanted to talk about this one was because the number one item on this list was accelerated time to market as the leading reason for selecting Agile as a methodology. Do you guys agree that accelerated time to market is the number one reason why, or why you should, or why people do?
Are you asking us to pretend we are taking the survey and which one of these we would rank? And actually, the way the question was set up is each response you could pick like your top 3 and you ranked them.
Right.
So you want us to give you that data? Is that the setup here?
I'm just asking if you believe that accelerated time to market should be the reason why people are selecting Agile as a methodology.
I think that depends on the context.
Depends on what?
It depends on the context.
On context.
On context, yes, it depends.
I can't do that anymore.
Is that some sort of a routine you guys have? Or?
It was from James and Arla, who we talked to. He had come visit us a while back, this past week. So, which we'll talk about in a future episode for fun. So accelerate time to market.
I like that in that same graph it talks about enhanced software quality is in like the top 4, increased productivity or top 5. Increased productivity is number 4. Like that is amazing considering that there are a lot of people that you talk to that are like, how do you write Agile? You do crap work? What are you doing? And often productivity and software quality is contrary to time to market.
Good, faster, cheap, right? You get 2.
But this goes back to what I just mentioned about the integration. It's we're working for our customer. What is most important given what the customer's asked us to do? If we're truly in an emergent market trying to build, say, a social networking website or a social networking app, and we are trying to seize upon a first mover opportunity because nobody's dropped an app like this before, we better be incentivized to accelerate our time to market because our window of opportunity to seize that market is limited. So if that's part of my business plan, awesome. Other things that may not be applicable. If I'm doing more of a back office thing where maybe security is important, I want to ensure I do things to increase the quality of the software so I don't have a security flaw.
Well, the faster you get it to market, the sooner you can find your security flaws.
Well, but that's where there's an additional layering of the overall demographic of who completed the survey here that makes this data a lot more relevant.
Well, like John said, we're just working with what we got here at the time.
So the market buzz is showing that, okay, from an investment strategy, this is awesome. If I do Agile, I can realize I can achieve return on investment faster. To 95% of all the chief level executives and managers out there and customers, that's music to their ears, and that's a great. You can sell that.
Yeah, that would be.
But I think that is also one of the biggest failures for a lot of Agile projects is that accelerated time to market also has a cost to it, right? That a lot of times you're doing Agile, you're doing your TDD or whatever, but you may not be going after the best software design, and that time to market slowly takes longer and longer, and then people start throwing it away.
I think the accelerated time to market is actually the fact that you don't have to spend so much time in a big upfront design model, right? So you can immediately start delivering software into production within weeks or a few months.
I mean, you do not wish to.
So I agree with that, but people have a tendency to change and force you into technical debt instead of just saying, "Hey, we've lost that up front, and we've gained the ability to change to what our real priorities are as we move."
I think, but having worked with Amos, I think what he's talking about is it's a real fine line to get that product out there and not paint yourself into a corner 6 months down the road because you took the shortcut without designing it flexible, or not flexible, but in a way that allowed change easy enough.
We're just trying to get rid of the excuse of Agile as using Agile as an excuse to not do good design.
So let me ask this question, since we're, obviously from the way the survey was set up, they identified accelerated time to market, faster realization of return on investment. That's awesome. Then they kind of dove into that, not really intentional. I think the data just worded this way. And again, charts that get the attention of management are ones that show big deltas. So we got the big 70% pyramid here that's red. We believe that Agile allows us to complete a project faster. Do we agree with that?
I think from beginning to end, no. I mean, if I think that's not, to me, that's not what the point of Agile is. I think you get a more accurate product and you get value added to your product earlier on. But the end, it's. I think we've even talked about it on here. Is that if you went and sat down and did something waterfall, it's not going to necessarily be done any sooner or later than Agile. But your value will be much, much later on.
Yeah, you'll defer the ROI.
Right, and your accuracy of what you really want or what you think you were going to get is going to be pretty wildly different from Agile, where you're getting the incremental pieces.
See, my concern about the way this data is this creating a buzz line that Agile is just all about going faster, and faster ROI, faster completion time, and as you kind of mentioned, Matt. Sometimes in the heat of the moment, if it's difficult to manage your customers' expectations, there's the tendency to kind of throw caution to the wind and start making bad decisions, incurring technical debt. I think that I would say that only really high level teams with really seasoned practitioners can sustain the discipline to not do that.
Yeah, and I think
I wish it just said faster response time than acceleration to market time.
Yeah, but so I'm just, to me, it's weird to say that my assessment is that I think a very select number of experienced practitioners are needed to really ensure that you can get a product to market faster, yet this data shows that the majority of the people think you can get to market faster, which means that there must be a lot of really good teams out there that I guess I've just never had the opportunity to work with.
But I think that in reality you can get to a completed product faster using Agile.
You can,
I think
but
it
that's
really
not
depends
that's
on
not
the
the
product
goal.
and it depends on the customer.
Right.
Of course it does.
Well, and again, the very non-scientific surveys we have now concluded, they say that the majority of the respondents felt like that Agile projects gave them a faster time to completion. So, sounds a little emotionally driven there. So,
and I also want to point out too, one of the things I find interesting, like the graph of why Agile is from a company process, higher level thing. There's also, as a developer, why do I want to be on an Agile team, which isn't really addressed in here. And for me, it's because it's beautiful and I get to be creative. My mind is open and life is happy, and we're jumping through fields of flowers and it's beautiful, and that's Agile. But some people don't like that, so they want to sit in the cave.
And you see that why Agile. If you go down to the very next page, it's kind of a lot of the same answers, same type of question, but it says people who are experienced Agile users, and that faster time to market goes halfway down the graph. And the top thing is the ability to manage changing priorities, which is what Agile is all about, is the ability to change, right?
Yeah, I liked this. This is one of the charts in the survey that I liked. I'll share that. So, because it made sense, because it was a qualified set of the respondents that they filtered down to show a more specific data set.
And I would say that I agree with this graph too. If I go through there, I'm like, yeah, that's probably it.
Okay, guys, we're just about out of time for the episode today.
So the one I want to throw out there is
Okay, hold on. I'm going to give you a chance to do that. I'm going to give you a chance to do that. So when we go into the pick segment, you can do your normal pick, but then you can also pick a stat or a metric from the survey that you'd like to highlight. How's that?
That's kind of what I want to say. John, I want to challenge you. What's the bottom line of this survey? So it doesn't
Agile good, waterfall
bad. It doesn't have
bad.
a conclusion. It doesn't have a takeaway. I mean, it's some folks would say that it's failed because on the first page it doesn't put the bottom line up front. So, what, in your thoughts, what is it?
I think it gives us a snapshot assessment of the industry trends, and they state that, and they state as much of that in their bottom line up front executive summary. about
Very broad bottom line.
Agile adoption and use, knowledge and execution, the benefits, and the Agile tools.
Well, as an architect, that ought to make you feel pretty good.
Yeah.
I mean, again, I said it straight up. I said I think that this is a great thing. It demonstrates actually that version 1 is very much in tune with their customers, and there's value to that. So there's nothing wrong with that. So I think that is the bottom line of the survey, though. I think there's an opportunity for, as Amos kind of mentioned, is there an opportunity to do more of an open, industry-based survey and make it so that I can't, and no one can take this and try to read between the lines and say the respondents are from a CRM database, it's all, and it is really specific about a tool. Instead, it's more about practices and values, which is what Agile's all about.
Yeah, and I think this is even though we said it came from this database of these tool users, I really think that we've got good talking points out of it, and so I don't want to throw this away as just complete crap, but I would say that anything after page 10 is probably not worth looking at.
No, that's where I think it's very, and to be fair to, obviously doing this costs money. Version 1 put some money into it, so in the spirit of an open community that's really all about learning and really trying to figure out how we embrace and effectively use this very abstract concept called Agile, there's a lot of value, and there's something to be said for a for-profit entity that invested to do this. And by that nature, guess what? I think they're entitled to have a little bit of gain from it. So they can put their name all over it. I think it's great. So,
okay, on that note, let's go ahead and get into the picks. And as I said, you can do your regular pick, and then if you want to highlight something from the survey, go ahead and do that. I'll go first just to get us off and running so you guys have a chance to look, since I threw the pick your favorite survey stat at you kind of at the last minute. So my pick is a blog article. Blog article, I guess it is, called Agile as Family Therapy. And I was reading it earlier today, and it's focused on trying to deal with stress of family life by going agile. So using a bottom-up idea flow and constant feedback and accountability in the family, and having kids pick their own punishments, etc. I think it's an interesting article and maybe an interesting read. And Jason, for a guy that
localized governance for your family, that's awesome.
For a guy that uses a Kanban board to run parts of his personal life, I figured you might be interested in that article.
So does that mean if I adapt to my conversation with my wife and leave to go to the bar, I can tell her I'm being agile?
If you want to. Yeah. If you can pull that off, Matt.
See, John, I'll share.
I'd like some coaching on how to do that after you get it mastered.
I'm teaching my kids what escalation criteria are, and also teaching them that escalation criteria are bad, so they should seek to follow the prescriptive guidance and avoid the need to exercise the escalation criteria.
All right, you might be kicked off the podcast. Okay, my favorite stat is from the survey is the best lessons learned. Even though it's after page 10, which Amos said everything after page 10 was crap, I still wanted to pick this because I think it highlights a lot of good things that people have learned and are trying to share here. That executive sponsorship is important, that training is important, that having an internal support group is important, full-time coaches are important, etc. So those are my picks. Amos, why don't we throw it over to you and see what you've got?
All right, so my first pick is Vagrant. Vagrant Up. It's a VM management tool. I use Vagrant and Chef in order to build out VMs, and whenever I'm not allowed to do continuous deployment, I still continuously deploy to VMs that look like production so I can feel better about my life. And then my favorite stat was down on page 10, the experienced Agile users. It says 84% of the experienced Agile users said that Agile improved their project visibility. I think that is a big thing that management would appreciate, customers would appreciate, is because they can see into the project and what's going on.
All right, good picks, Amos. Thanks. Matt, what do you have?
I've got an article here that from the Scrum Alliance, actually. About it's called History Lesson Using the Core Elements of Scrum in 1961. It's about when Studebaker was first bringing out the Avanti and trying to save Studebaker Corporation, how they took a bunch of guys and stuck them in a house in Palm Springs and said, be agile and make us a car that's awesome. And, they didn't really say be agile, but I've always liked the history of Kanban and Agile coming from the manufacturing process and tying this back to what we do on a day-to-day basis. So I found that really fascinating. And as far as my favorite thing in the little survey here, it wasn't a stat, but it was down on page 8 under what would they say. And there's 2 pieces there. One, that Agile comes with a cultural change or don't do it at all, which it's very black and white, but I really feel like it's a holistic process, and that goes back to the getting the integrating the right people and buying in, and it's not just something that you as a developer can start doing it and have definite benefit on like a personal level or a pair level, but to make it successful throughout the hierarchy, it's really got to be that cultural shift. So I think that's a something you got to keep in mind.
I just have to say I jumped on that Studebaker thing, and the car that they came up with looks really cool. It's like they turned the front. What is the back? It's really weird.
Yeah.
Nice picks, Matt. And Jason, you get to finish us up with the picks today.
I get to. So I have first as a pick, I have kind of something that was inspired by looking at the survey, but it's more of a personal experience. That is that working on kind of a project now, and you guys can laugh at this. First one for me. It's a project that's pretty much extensive. It's completely managed using free applications available from Google. So they're all out there on the cloud, so it's, Google Drive. They got a few custom apps they built on top of the Google framework that they're running in a Google space out there. And I'll share, I'm actually, having not done that, I'm impressed at everything we've been able to do. There's even some real neat use cases that even hit the survey. The survey talked about, it was somewhere one of the top things about people viewing that maintaining a wiki for documentation is a good Agile tool, or it supports Agile. Well, I think it's more fun. You can all use a Google Doc and you can all edit it at the exact same time, and it's kind of fun. Or you can observe what your colleagues may be doing that they may or they may not be telling you about by watching how they modify the document in real time. So, neat experience. If you haven't tried it, if you're on a project that maybe is still using more, say, traditional land or native-based clients like Office, if you can use Google Docs, give it a shot, see what you think. So it's free, it's out there. It's relatively secure, but your data is out there in the cloud, so make sure that that's okay with whatever your information assurance policy is. 2 other specific shout-outs from the survey. Big fan of LeanKit and LeanKit Kanban as a product by the Bandit guys. Very subtly mentioned in the survey, Bandit software and LeanKit was the number 2 product most recommended by people to the number 1 respondent, which was, of course, version 1. So I thought that was cool. Kudos to the LeanKit guys. Their stuff rocks for having a online Kanban board that you can customize to do anything you want it to do. Very cool. And I think it was funny as a guy who's talking here about saying that, this idea of native-based Office apps that run locally on your PC or your workstation, that was really last generation's IT. This generation's IT is all about the cloud. It's all about secure information sharing, strategies by which you can set data free. So I thought it was pretty funny that Excel is still the number 1 used Agile tool out there. So it'll be interesting to roll the survey.
Well, they did say that management was the biggest pusher of Agile, right? The biggest champion of Agile.
And we know they love Office and things that run natively on their PC, on your workstation, so you can rigidly control them. So
that's right.
So we need to put this episode in a time capsule, do this again in 10 years, and see what's out there.
I think we put it in a time capsule and check it again next year and see.
I want to see the big difference, so I want to roll it.
So is that our title?
What's that?
Put this thing in a time capsule?
Maybe.
Set information free.
All right, guys, that's all we have time for today. I'd like to thank my co-hosts for joining me. Amos King, why don't you tell everyone where they can find out more about you and what you're up to lately?
Well, I just started a new job. I'm working from home now, so I'm a little harder to find in St. Louis. But you can find me on Twitter at ADKRON, same on GitHub. And my website, although my new job, I told the designer there that part of me taking it was they had to help me come up with a design. It still looks like crap at dirtyinformation.com.
Great. Matt, where can people find out more about you?
I'm on Twitter sometimes, Matt Corwell, and that's really about it.
Good. That's a good place. Jason?
I'm on Twitter at Tice Thoughts, or I'm on the web at www.jasontice.com. So for all the folks that want to talk about survey design, I'll be ready to talk about survey design.
I think they're lining up right now, Jason.
I'm
I hear them outside.
Yeah.
We're going to go to Agile 2013, and snipers are going to be out looking to shoot me.
That might
And
be.
Sextro, because you brought this up. So.
Yeah, it's all my fault. And you guys can find me online on Twitter at jcsextro or on the web at johnsextro.com. Thanks for listening. Be sure to check out our website. We'll have a link to the 7th Annual State of Agile Development Survey in our show notes. And the website is thisagilelife.com. And keep living this agile life.